Have you ever had a hem fall out of your t-shirt or other garment? It's so annoying. Today I'm going to teach you how to fix that. So repairing a hem on a garment often needs a machine called a serger or cover stitch, and those are very specialized machines and can be a little bit more expensive to purchase, when we can actually fix our garments with our standard sewing machine if we have a double needle and two different threads running into our garment. And what that allows is that on the top we have the two threads that make a really nice look, and on the back we have the zigzag, which gives us the stretch that we need to keep the seams from popping. If you've ever tried to repair a garment and just used a straight stitch, then you realize that oftentimes you'll pop that seam because it doesn't have the give that we need. And so today I'm going to show you how we can repair those garments so that they stay repaired and you don't have the expense of a serger or a cover stitch. So let's go take a look at what we need. To get started, we have our project that we're going to be fixing. I have my t-shirt that I absolutely love, and I'm going to fix the hem on the bottom side of that. And then some of the other tools that we'll need today, I have some pins to help me with my seam, some scissors to snip threads. I like to use a hot ruler, and I'll show you how I iron the seam to help me. You may need a marking pin, and we use the friction pins often. On a t-shirt or other garment, sometimes the fabric is so soft that a pin won't work, but friction makes a highlighter that is also erasable, so it probably is easier to use on a garment. I have our twin needles here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about twin needles and your options. And if you're using a thicker fabric, or you notice that your fabric's trying to gather as you sew through it, then you may need a walking foot. Okay, before we get into actually hemming our shirt, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to walk you through the different options that we have in terms of twin needles and the type of thread that we'll want to use on this project. So for our thread, we are using multi-purpose thread. That's a polyester thread. You wouldn't want to use cotton on hemming a t-shirt because the cotton is going to be one that's not going to last. So you'll want to make sure that you're using polyester thread. And I have 3 different colors here today to use so that you can really see what thread I'm using and which position it's in on the sewing machine. But in reality, you're going to want to have 2 threads that are the same color, and those threads are going to match the project that you're working on. So I really should be using orange today for my orange t-shirt, but I wanted you to be able to see the different pieces as it's going through the sewing machine, so I have 3 different colors. Then when it comes to twin needles, there are a lot of different options that you can get with twin needles. Most of the time we're going to use a twin needle that's considered a universal. And universals are the one that we use on most of our sewing, and they do come in different sizes. So the sizes I have are 2mm, 3mm, and 6mm, and that's the distance between the 2 needles. So we have one shaft that goes into the machine, and then there's 2 needles attached to that one shaft. And the distance between those 2 is the different millimeters that you can get on the twin needles. And then you also have other options like stretch, ballpoint, and then denim and jeans. And on a stretch needle, that's what you're using more on like spandex or something really stretchy. I guess if you're going to repair lingerie or something like that, you would need to use a stretch because you also use it with elastic. Ballpoint is really where we're using those with knits, and the idea is that the needle kind of pushes past the fibers because you don't want to cut the fibers in something that's been knitted. And then if you're going to hem like jeans or something denim, then they do make a double needle for that type of material, and those needles are a little thicker and heavier so that they can take going through that thicker fabric. So just make sure you kind of have an idea of what your project is and the material it's made of so that you can pick a needle that works best for you. So today on ours, I'm just going to use kind of an average universal double needle, and so I'm going to use the 3mm, and just so I can show you what this kind of looks like on here, pull this guy out. And you can see there that we have the one shaft, and then we have the 2 needles coming off of that. And we'll run 2 different spools of thread through each needle. To get this project going, we need one more thing. We've got to get the hem kind of pressed and ready for us to run through the sewing machine. And one of the easiest ways that I've found to do this is to use one of these hot rulers from Clover. And it allows us to actually put it within the garment and iron directly onto it. So what I've done is kind of put this here, and I've moved the hem up to about 1/2 inch on this ruler, and then you can just take your iron and go right against it and press it right on the ruler. And that lets you make sure that you have this consistent seam all the way around and that you're not trying to judge where that goes. After we have our hem pressed, I like to take a few pins and just keep it down. One thing about t-shirts is they really try to roll on you, and I wanted to try to keep it as smooth as I could because of keeping that consistent seam all the way around. And so I have pinned from the outside because we'll want the outside of the shirt facing up when we go through the sewing machine, but we need that hem to the back side so that it hides it when we're wearing it. So I'm gonna finish pinning here, and then we'll take a look at the sewing machine and how to thread with a double needle. Okay, so today we are using the Baby Lock Soprano, and I'm gonna show you how to set up the threading on our machine. You'll wanna make sure and check your own manual to make sure that you know for your specific machine how a double needle setup is for it specifically. So for the Soprano, what we're gonna start with is the fact that we have an additional spool pin that comes with this machine, and it's going to sit on the bobbin winder. And when you put it on, you wanna make sure that you hear the click. It clicks into place and that holds it still, and then you're gonna rotate down the second pin. And that way we're allowed to put 2 different spools of thread on at the same time. And again, I'm using 2 different colors today so that you can see how the threading is and help you keep up with it for yourself later. If this was a project I'm actually working on, then both of these threads would be the same color. On the one thread for our red, it's our normal spool of thread, and it's going to thread just like normal with the machine. So it's gonna go through the track just like normal. And with our green thread here too, it's going to follow on this upper piece, it's going to follow the same track as well. So for each of these pieces, we're in behind one, and then it wraps around, and then we'll take it into our take-up lever and down towards our needle for both of our threads. Okay, so down here in our needle, I have a single needle in place, and so I'm gonna actually switch that out for my double needle and then drop in my bobbin, and then we'll show you how the thread comes down from the top and catches here through the eyes of the needle. So a double needle does have a flat on the back of its shaft too, so it goes in the same way as your single needle. Just make sure that you've placed it all the way up in the shaft. I'm going to drop in my bobbin. Okay, one thing to remember about double needles, you never want to use your automatic needle threader on a double needle. It's not in alignment like a single needle is, and you can ruin your automatic needle threader. So we're going to need to manually thread these eyes. For our red thread, you're going to make sure that when it comes down from the take-up lever, it actually goes behind and catches in at number 6 on our Baby Locks, and that is the little catch just in front of our needles. For most of your machine, that's going to be the case. So for the one that's on the standard spool, it's going to catch in behind the tension here in front of the needles and then go through the eye on the left side. And then for our second thread, the one that's the additional piece, it comes down like normal, but we do not put it behind this bar. It sits, it just goes down from here, and then we're gonna go directly into the eye of the needle. That's the difference between the 2 spools. So I'm gonna get me a clean end so that I can go into the eye of the needle. Just threading it through, and I'm gonna tuck it underneath my presser foot. If you struggle with threading the eye of a needle, then having a pair of tweezers actually helps keep your fingers back from it, and it makes it a little bit easier too. For the green thread, We're gonna take it in just like normal. Going to come around. And then when it comes down here, it does not go behind the metal piece in front of the needle. It's just gonna go straight down and in through the eye. I'm gonna tuck it under our foot. Now that we have our needles threaded, we need to make one more adjustment on our screen of our sewing machine. So with the Baby Lock Soprano, we can let it know that we have a twin needle. And what that does for us is it prevents us from selecting different stitches that would damage the machine. So under the document, we can maneuver down here to twin needle and then arrow over that we have that on, and then hit OK. And you should see up here on the screen that we now show 2 needles. And then that prevents us from selecting a stitch that would damage the machine or the stitch doesn't work. We're just going to use a regular straight stitch today for the hemming of our t-shirt. Let's take a look at threading one more time. So with our red thread, it's on the standard spool, and we're gonna start with that one first. We're gonna thread it just like we normally do. Okay, when it comes down, we are going to catch here in front of the needle and go behind that little tension. And then we're gonna go through the eye of the left needle. And remember here, because we have a twin needle in, we cannot use automatic needle threader because it does not line up. So we're gonna have to just thread it manually. And then I'm gonna tuck it behind my foot to keep it out of the way. Okay, and then we're gonna grab the secondary thread, which is our green thread. At the top, it's gonna be just the same as our red thread. When it comes down here though, we are not going to catch it in front of that tension. We're gonna go straight down and through the eye of the right needle. Okay, then I'm gonna take and tuck it underneath my foot. And we are ready to hem our t-shirt. So I think it takes longer to actually get it set up than to actually do the work. But here we're ready to hem our shirt, and I am going to line up the hem of my shirt with the inside edge of my J-foot, which is just our multi-purpose foot on the Baby Lock machines. And the other thing that I want to make sure that you're watching is that on the underside, this is not rolling. So you want to make sure that it stays flat as it's going through the machine. And then you're just going to sew like normal. And we're just going to work our way all the way around the shirt. One thing to note here, if you're noticing that the top is trying to bunch really bad as it's going through, that's when I would switch to that walking foot so that it's pulling both layers at the same time. Here with my t-shirt, it doesn't seem to matter that I need the walking foot, but if you notice that with your fabric that it's trying to bunch, then you'll need to switch to a walking foot. When I make it all the way back around, I am going to backstitch over those threads to make sure that they tie off and they don't come loose too. Okay, and you can use the thread cutters on your machine. You just do not ever want to use your needle threader. And there we have the hem of our shirt fixed. Just like that, we have our hem in our t-shirt, and we have those 2 nice hems here on the outside and the zigzag stitch on the inside, which gives us the stretch that we need. So that is why it's so important to use a double needle when you're fixing a project like we had. And I did want to note before we leave that you make sure and change your double needle back to your single needle. And if you have a machine that has a setting on the screen, that you need to make sure and reset that back to a single needle as well. I hope you learned something new with me today, and we hope you join us again soon. If you liked what you saw today, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to receive those notifications, make sure you click on the bell icon. Thanks for letting us turn your inspiration into a creation.